just what is the best board game? This is my best board game. Wait, Efka, but the title said El Grande, not Side Gig Confluenza. Are you having me on? Is this a bait and switch? No. Think about it. What is Sideshow Carnival? Well, it's bizarre, esoteric, it's completely impractical, and most people don't even like it. If I tell you that Sideburns Conference is my favorite game, you might buy it, and that is most likely a mistake. Instead, I want to do a series focusing on my favorite games from multiple genres. Today, we're talking about El Grande, my favorite area majority game, and one of two things are happening. You're either nodding your head going, yeah, El Grande's pretty good, I can respect that, or, what's an El Grande? In which case, you are in for a treat, because this is one of the best games ever made. Let me show you why. This is what your brain looks like when you're playing a board game. And this is what your brain looks like when it's playing El Grande. If you, like me, desire for your brain to be in this state, then El Grande should already be going into the shopping cart. But if that hasn't convinced you, it also has one of these. Ooh, that feels good! Inside, board games have a long history of flagship components. From the Birdhouse Dice Tower in Wingspan to the Dark Tower in the Dark Tower, even the Robber in Catan is somewhat of a flagship piece. A component that happy campers huddle over to warm their hands, a centerpiece that brings everyone together and makes them go ooh and ah and isn't it clever? Catan came out in 1995, and that same year saw the release of El Grande. And it too had its own robber piece, except now it looks like this because the piece represents the king, who, if you think about it, is also a kind of robber. But it also had the Castillo, and let me tell you, these two are the OG flagship components. And it's not just street cred. Birdhouse Dice Towers are very cute, but you just use it to roll some dice. It looks like a birdhouse in a game about birds, and I like that, but that's where its centerpieceness ends. The King and the Castillo are the definitive flagship components, because the tensions of the entire game revolve around them. Let me show you how it works. This is a bunch of men, caballeros specifically. There's a whole conveyor belt of men happening in El Grande. You want to get them from this general pile to your personal court, and then onwards to Spain, where they will score points if you have more than other players in a region. Hence area majority. If I have more men in that region, I score points. More men in that region than you, also more points, and so on. So, let me show you how to move a man. El Grande has two types of cards, power cards and action cards. At the beginning of every round, you will play one of your 13 power cards. Once you play one, gone forever. The lower the card, the lower you are in turn order. But also, lower cards bring more men to your court. For example, the 13 card guarantees that you go first, but brings you 0 men, which is where you might ask, how important is it to be first? Once everyone's played their power cards and gotten their caballeros, that's where the real fun begins. In turn order, every player claims 1 action card. These will let you send caballeros from your court to one of the regions in Spain, anywhere from 1 to 5. Remember, sending them to Spain is what matters, because the more you have in a region, the more likely you are to score points from it. But these cards also have a special action. The game revolves around these cards. The actions are so dramatic, so game warping, so profound to your wheels and also deals that sometimes even just going second can be destructive, soul crushing, flip table-esque. One of the actions is to move the king. It's a great example of something simple, and there's just layers of consequence. To move the king, you take the king and move it Action done. But you can only place caballeros in regions that are adjacent to the king, which means that with one action you can place a man to break a tie you had with your opponent in a region and then just move the king away, meaning no one can place there anymore. But that's not it. The region you move the king into is deadlocked. In fact, there are various actions in the game that let you move caballeros around, but this is rock solid. Nothing can move in here at all. There is so much power behind moving the king. But the thing is, as powerful as that action is, can it withstand the combined might of the 4 other actions? When each of them is game warping, consider this: when you take an action, you have the option to not do it. And it happens more often than you think because these actions are so devastating. Sometimes you take them just so no one else has access to them. An action card might let you place a new scoring tile on a region. Let's say the green player, Mr. Farr, was dominating Toledo, the highest scoring region in the game. To do that, he had to give up contests in other areas. Now, what if someone had the power to make it the lowest scoring region in the game? What would Mr. Farr sacrifice to have that power for himself? And if he couldn't, what would he promise to not have that power used? What would he give up for that? How far would Klinger go? Going first means picking these actions first, and even that can be an agonizing decision, because what if there's 2 action cards that in the wrong hands doom you? You can have one but not the other. What are you gonna do? So to answer my earlier question, yes, going first is very important. But what about going last? El Grande does not let you stay at the top of the pack forever. There's only 113 and you need to deploy low cards to have caballeros to begin with. So what happens when you go last? Well, the later you are in turn order, the earlier you are in turn order next turn to determine turn order for that turn. Basically, if I play a 1, I'll go last, but the next turn I can play my 13 first. This is important because you don't score regions every round. Scoring happens at the end of every 3 rounds, splitting El Grande into a 3-act structure, each beginning with claiming territories and posturing and ending with, well, you know how these things end. Schadenfreude and tears. Which finally brings us to the Castillo. Anytime you deploy caballeros, you can take any number of them, and instead of putting them into Spain, you can chuck them into the Castillo. And there they will stay, forgotten by everyone, each player moving on with their schemes, not paying attention until the scoring begins. At which point, every player selections a region secretly on a nifty dial and sweet, sweet release. If you have the most men in the Castillo, you'll also score points. But then they all go to the region you've selected on this dial, completely changing the landscape of this battlefield. I don't need to explain why that's cool, and I hope you can see how the Castillo is such a pivotal and dramatic component in a game that's all about counting how many pieces you and other players have in territories, and then with one stage magician's trick, completely changing that number. Recently, board games have somewhat forgotten how much fun it is to reveal things. It's a guaranteed surprise, especially when what you're revealing is so central to how your game shakes out. But revealing things can also feel unfair, a surprise that you had no say in. El Grande lets you count how many pieces are being put in. In fact, there's a rule that says you must announce loudly how many pieces you're putting in as you drop them into this vault. The only thing you can't do is peek inside, so it's up to you to keep tabs on it. Most people won't, and that's part of the fun. The Castillo is as much a surprise as each player allows it to be. You are in control of this. But mostly it's a game that wants you to thread a really fine needle. For something so mathematical and concerned with numbers, it's almost uninterested in your ability to account. Anytime I've done well in El Grande was because I could read the room rather than the game state. Knowing what my opponents thought I would do and then deliberately doing something unexpected was enough to upset their plans and force them to recalibrate. For something full of meeples and a score track wrapped around the board, El Grande is surprisingly psychology and interaction driven. How does something so fundamentally beige play like Twilight Imperium? And it constantly keeps your brain in a heightened state. There's this term in psychology called being in the zone or flow, coined by Mihai Csikszentmihalyi, and the basic idea is that if your knowledge and skill matches your confidence in a subject, then you enter a state of flow where everything just vibes and feels rewarding. El Grande, despite being so cutthroat, makes it quite easy to enter flow because the strategy in the game is evident. If I move the king into an area, no one can place pieces there. If I have the most men in the Castillo as well, this scoring ground is a cinch. But it also makes you pay attention. What are the other action cards? Can someone change scores in my region? Can someone trigger scoring early before I can implement my moves? I need to predict the moves that are unpredictable and make my predictable moves unpredictable. Everything feels holistic, tied together with a rubber string. Pull on one end and everything bends. Pull too hard, the whole thing snaps. I think there's something to be said about the fact that El Grande, a game from 1995, is my favorite area majority game. The fact that so many games came afterwards, yet none of them have managed to improve on it. Here's two things you need to know about area majority games. Number one, you shouldn't confuse them with area control games. Area control games are the ones where you have miniatures fight over a control of the territory. And in area majority games, you want to have the most in a territory. Thing number two is that they're all kind of clunky. I can count the non-El Grande ones that I like on the fingers of my two hands. So we have Hansa Teutonica, Iwari, Ankh. That's it. The reason they are so rarely instant hits is because it requires the designers to have a combination of skills that not a lot of people have. You have to have a real good understanding of math, but also psychology and how those two intersect. You have to understand what incentivizes people and how to affect that with numbers, and you also have to make it really fun. Basically, you need to be a magician. But also, the fact that El Grande is 30 years old means I don't really have to sell you on the idea that this game is great. It's 30 years old. One or two people have played it by now. And it keeps being reprinted somehow for some reason, I don't know. If you like games with a mean bite, if you like conflict, if you like weaving yourself out of impossible situations, if you like reading people, if you like taming chaos, listen, do yourself a favor. Play this game once, at least. A few notes on this recent production. You might think that maybe it looks pleasant, but nothing special. This is what the printing before looked like. And I just think this is a vast improvement. It's also almost entirely free of plastic. The only compromise are these little pips that connect the dials together, and I think this is just overall a really lovely touch. Most El Grande fans will warn you that whilst this box says the game plays 2 to 5, it really is 5 to 5, as in it's 5 players or nothing. And I almost agree with that. I think the 4-player game is fine, but this is a high player count game that really blooms when it's steeped with more humans. In the next episode of My Favorite Game, we'll talk auction games. What do you think my pick will be? What's your favorite auction game? Do you think El Grande did area majority best, or do you think I'm wrong? Let me know in the comments. And now it's time for the final Castillo reveal. I wonder what's inside. It's the subscribe button. Oh, and looking right behind it is our Patreon plug. If you subscribe, listen, if you subscribe, a very wonderful thing will happen. You will get more of these videos. And if you want to support independent board game reviewers, you can give us a little bit of money every month on that Patreon thing. See you soon.